The case of Valdemir Höckler in a quiet Brazilian town. The faint glow of a simple home cut through the night. Inside, 43-year-old Valdemir Höckler, a hardworking man who divided his time between driving and raising cattle, was living what would turn out to be the last evening of his life. No one could have imagined how quickly love, jealousy, and fear would combine inside those walls, setting into motion a tragedy that would tear his family apart. By morning, Valdemir had vanished. For his children, it was unthinkable. He was a man of dreams, plans, and steady routine, someone who rarely missed a day of work and always put family first. Yet suddenly, he was gone. Almost immediately, rumors began to spread. Police launched a search, and what had started as a family mystery soon unraveled into one of Brazil's most disturbing true crime stories. What happened on the night of November 14, 2022? And how did an ordinary life descend into betrayal and horror? A man defined by hard work. Born in 1979, though his exact birth date remains uncertain, Valdemir grew up in a large, close-knit Brazilian family. From a young age, he understood responsibility. Neighbors knew him as a kind and dependable man, someone who worked tirelessly to build a better future. He supported himself as a driver and managed a modest livestock business in the countryside. Alongside his wife Jeanette, he built a family that included two sons, Jonathan and Matheus. For a time, their home radiated happiness. But behind closed doors, the picture was far more complicated. The other family. When Matheus was just a year old, Valdemir confessed a devastating truth. He had fathered another child with a woman named Claudia Fernandez Tabarez, a former teacher who had once worked in agriculture. Their daughter, Gabriela, had been born only months after Matheus. For Jeanette, the betrayal was unbearable. Still, she chose not to divorce, holding on to the hope that her husband would one day give up his double life and return fully to their family. But Valdemir continued splitting his time between the two households. Claudia, determined to keep him, grew increasingly obsessive. She followed them in her car, spied on their movements, and harassed Jeanette with constant phone calls. Even during family gatherings, Claudia's presence lingered like a shadow. Eventually, Jeanette made a heartbreaking choice. She packed her husband's belongings and left them at Claudia's door. From that point on, Valdemir lived with Claudia, holding on to family despite the fractured situation. Valdemir remained present for his sons. He provided for them financially, spent time with them regularly, and joined family barbecues where, for a few hours, life seemed normal again. Known for his humor and good nature, he was the kind of man who could light up a room with his laughter. Over time, Jonathan and Matheus grew into teenagers and later adults who continued to see their father. Gabriela, however, grew distant, eventually moving out when she turned 18. By 2022, after decades of turmoil, Claudia and Valdemir made their relationship official through marriage. But even then, tensions within the family never fully disappeared, especially after the death of Valdemir's father, which created disputes over inherited land and money. The final weekend in early November 2022, Jonathan, his wife, and their 3 young children visited the home where Valdemir now lived with Claudia. Despite Jonathan's distrust of his father's wife, whom he considered controlling, he stayed cordial. That weekend, the family laughed, ate pizza, and shared stories with friends late into the night. Everything seemed normal, but only days later, Valdemir stopped answering calls. On November 15, he failed to show up for work, something completely out of character. Colleagues grew concerned and reached out to Claudia, who claimed she didn't know where he was. Within hours, she reported him missing. Strange behavior. As the search intensified, Jonathan and Matheus scoured rural areas where their father often worked. At the same time, Claudia's behavior drew attention. When Jonathan and his wife stayed in her house to help, she refused to sleep in her own bedroom, choosing the living room sofa instead. From there, she had a direct view of the refrigerator. When Jonathan tried to open it for water, she reacted with unusual intensity, as though she were guarding something. Over the following days, she allowed no one else to open the fridge or freezer, insisting she would serve food herself. Volunteers and neighbors thought it was odd, but in the chaos of the search, no one pressed further. The discovery on November 19th. Investigators entered Claudia's home. Neighbors had noted something strange. Her freezer, normally empty, was suddenly packed full. When police began removing items, they uncovered a horrifying truth. Hidden beneath bags of frozen food was the lifeless body of Valdemir Höckler. The discovery stunned the community. Police believed Claudia had sedated her husband, bound him, suffocated him with a plastic bag, and concealed his body in the freezer. Within hours, a warrant was issued for her arrest. Claudia's confession. Claudia eventually surrendered herself to authorities, even recording a video beforehand claiming she would face justice. In her testimony, she described years of abuse and threats, insisting she had acted in self-defense. According to her, Valdemir was jealous, controlling, and violent. She claimed he once slapped her in public and often forbade her from leaving the house. On the night of November 14th, she said she gave him a sleeping pill, tied his hands and feet as though handling livestock, and suffocated him out of fear that he would kill her first. Her lawyer painted her as a victim, a woman who endured years of abuse and snapped under pressure. But investigators weren't convinced. Motives and money. The evidence painted a different picture. The concealment of the body, inconsistencies in her story, and her obsessive control of the refrigerator suggested premeditation. Family members also revealed that Valdemir had been keeping large sums of cash at home, between $38,000 and $50,000 money he intended to invest in new land. Some believed Claudia acted not out of fear, but out of greed and resentment. Fallout and aftermath for Jonathan and Matus. The discovery was devastating. Jonathan recalled the chilling moment he had stayed at Claudia's home, drinking water from the same refrigerator where his father's body was hidden. For Gabriela, the tragedy was unbearable, her father gone, and her mother accused of killing him. Torn between grief and loyalty, she tried to stand by Claudia, even as the evidence mounted. By mid-2023, Claudia was briefly released under electronic monitoring to work, but public outrage forced the courts to reverse the decision. She remains in custody awaiting trial. Unanswered questions to this day. The case of Valdemir Höckler raises haunting questions. Was Claudia truly a victim pushed to the edge by years of abuse? Or was this a calculated act driven by control and financial gain? For his family, the scars will never heal. A man once defined by laughter, hard work, and devotion to his children was hidden in the cold silence of a freezer, betrayed by the woman he trusted most. And so, the story remains not just a tragedy, but a chilling reminder of how love, jealousy, and fear can end in unthinkable violence. Thanks for watching Coldframe. For more real cases from across Latin America, subscribe to our channel. For more stories of betrayal, mystery, and justice are coming soon.